Are Muslims commanded to deceive non-Muslims in any way at any time if it serves Islam? So there are two elements here that are important to discuss. One is taqiyya, the other one is bid'ah. So when it comes to taqiyya, this idea of
And the problem that I have with this discussion, the issue of taqiyya, when we think of taqiyya, who do we usually associate it with? No, everybody's scared to say, right? we usually associate it with Shia. But it is not a uniquely Shia concept. If somebody comes and holds a gun to your head and tells you to denounce your religion, right? Is this permissible, or do I have to die? Now, did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obligate me to die at that point and say, no, you have to stand up and you have to proclaim your Islam? No, that's a silly expectation. And we have a very clear story of this. We have three situations, right? We have Yasir and Sumayya, radiallahu anhuma, and we have the story of Ammar, their son. Yasir and Sumayya, they were being tortured. Yasir and Sumayya, they were being tortured, and they went to Ammar and they said that we're going to torture you unless you denounce the religion of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he said, I denounce the religion. And he went to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's like, Ya Rasulullah, this is what I said. And what did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He said that Allah knows what is in your heart. Allah knows your iman. So when it comes to issues of, and this is not a uniquely Islamic concept, right? This is not a uniquely Islamic idea. If somebody is going to hold your, is going to threaten you with abuse, if someone is going to threaten you with, to kill you, or someone is going to threaten you to hurt you in a major way, to denounce, at that point a person has a choice, right? They have a choice. Do people have strength in character and will? For example, Yasir and Sumayya, they did. And they said, we don't care. You can push us, you can make us try to say whatever you want, but we will never denounce the religion. We will never denounce our Islam. Another example of this, Bilal, radiallahu anh, right? When they were putting the rocks on him in the heat of the desert, he kept saying, Ahadun Ahad. So do some people have that strength of iman? Do they have that strength of character where they can stand up in any situation and they can speak? Yes, they are. But this is not something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obligates. This is not an obligation that every single Muslim has to fulfill. Can it be a sign of a person's iman and their standing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Yes, absolutely. I truly believe that. That it doesn't matter what the situation is, that this person will come out and they will stand for their religion, they will stand for their truth. But to obligate that is silly. And the fact that a number of non-Muslims try to use this against us, I find also silly. Because they'll be like, oh, well, you guys practice taqiyya. Well, number one, who told you about taqiyya? This idea, this concept, who is telling you that taqiyya is thing? I, as a Muslim, am telling you that taqiyya is part of the religion. So how come you trust me here, but you don't trust you don't trust me in other things? Either you listen to me or you don't listen to me. And this idea of protecting oneself, this is a very, very human, very natural response to a number of things. The second part of this is khida'. Now, when it comes to actual deception, the Prophet ﷺ, he allowed pure deception only in one situation, and that is in active cases of war. Right? The war machinations. If I am scheming and planning and trying to outmaneuver my opponent, then the Prophet ﷺ allowed it within the construct of war. Again, this is not uniquely Islamic. And it's interesting how Orientalists and non-Muslims who attack Islam, they choose these two concepts. They say, oh, well, you guys do this. Well, did Islam invent this? Did Islam invent this idea of lying to protect myself? Did Islam invent this idea of war machinations and like war schemes and strategies? Like these are not like quote unquote Islamic concepts. This is not something that the Prophet ﷺ came and he brought. Everybody was like, oh my God, this is a great idea. We should do this too. This is not something that Islam came that was unique. These are things that were a natural part of human history, and deceiving your opponent is something that is very natural. So these are the only places that, number one, where taqiyya is an individual thing, right? What an individual does to protect themselves when their life is in danger, and this is something that is completely reasonable, and I stand behind it 100%. And the second one is deception in war. But deceiving in war is not an individual decision, right? That's a decision that's made by the military commander, it's made by the state. I can't go around and take advantage of the government. I can't go around going to the bank and taking advantage of a landlord and taking advantage of the mechanic, saying that, oh, I'm in a state of war, and I I need to take advantage of the people around here. This is al-Muslimun ala shurutihim. Like the Muslim is on the conditions that they make and on the agreements and the contracts that they make with others. I cannot make that individual decision. And if we want to build a community and a society, that community and society needs to be built on trust. It is not built on deception. Deception is only, again, in a military construct. It is not out of those. The only other times I'm allowed to lie, right? So are there situations where I'm allowed to lie? Yeah, absolutely. If my wife cooks something and I don't like how it tastes, what should I do out of kindness? Right? Out of kindness, I should be like, oh, mashallah, this is really good. And then maybe I can tell her, like, hey, listen, you know, what you cooked earlier, maybe, you know, can you fix that? Like, it wasn't really that good. But in the moment, there's something she's looking for. Or if she's wearing something, even if I don't like what she's wearing, I tell her that she looks beautiful. And these things in these situations, this is permissible. Why? Because you're trying to win the heart of your loved one, right? You love your wife, you want to win her heart. The same thing applies also if I'm trying to bring two people together, if I'm trying to do sulh. If there are two people who I know who are fighting, I go to, and I want to bring them together, I can go to one and be like, yeah, you know, he was talking really well of you. And I can go to him, he was really talking well of you, and you know, they want to get together, and he wants to, you know, take care of this problem. In those situations, it's fine. Again, when it comes to bringing hearts together, the Prophet ﷺ, he allowed it specifically in those situations. This doesn't mean that if I'm out all night with my friends, right, and I'm playing cards, or you know, I'm playing dominoes or something, and my wife was like, where were you? I was like, I was praying tahajjud. Right? No, that's not. Obviously, that's not what it means. The idea is to win the heart, right? The idea is to win the heart and to bring the hearts together. It's not to deceive. Assalamu alaikum. I have a work situation. I've been struggling work. I work for one of the national security agencies. I have a minor advisory role to policymakers. Okay. So basically, this question, it's a long question. The question is about working for a national security agency, and this person feels like they're advocating on behalf of the situation in Palestine and in Israel, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala aid our brothers and sisters there. Ameen. And they're like, well, I keep advocating and I keep doing more, and alhamdulillah, we were able to advocate for this pause, but now that the pause is over, the bombing is worse than it was before. And now I'm in a spiritual crisis and I'm having problems navigating this space. What should I do? I mean, the first and best thing to do always to make dua, and it's always important to recognize when we work in certain spaces, right? Whether it be for a national security agency, whether we work for the Department of Defense. I know there are some individuals here who have contracts with like Raytheon and like Lockheed Martin and some of these organizations that actually build missiles and things. Navigating those spaces is very difficult, and it's very challenging. And this is a very personal question. If I'm in that space and I feel like I'm advocating for justice, right? I'm advocating for justice. I'm advocating for good. The contributions that I'm making are positive contributions. Then you stay in that space. And being very honest, and my advice to this person and to this individual is, I would rather have you in that space than someone else. Right? It's very important for me. Like and the fact that you are worried is a very strong sign for me that like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have iman, right? Why would a person who didn't have iman be worried about these things? You're clearly worried. You're worried about the Muslims. You're worried about the state of affairs. You're worried about your participation in that. These are all things that you should be very proud of. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you this remorse and this feeling in your heart. These are things that we should embrace. And it will it's scary if they're gone. If you ever stop feeling something, then there's a problem. But the fact that you are feeling something, this is something that is very noble, and it's something that you should definitely be proud of. How to navigate that space, it's very difficult. And I know individuals who work in the Department of Defense, and sometimes it can feel overwhelming. But it's also important to learn language and how to navigate and how to deal in those spaces as well. Sometimes people will be like, okay, well, I don't feel like I can say anything. I said, that's understandable, but you are allowed to ask questions. And sometimes just a question and the way that you word it and the way that you say it can show your displeasure with something without being a direct attack. It's important to learn how to speak. All of these spaces, whether it be in the Department of Defense or in the White House or in the Capitol building, whatever it might be, learning how to speak is an art. Learning how to present arguments is an art. Learning how to ask questions is an art. And these things, there need to be discussions around them. And the thing is, we as Muslims, unfortunately, we don't have big lobbying firms where these discussions are taking place. You find this in other communities. You find it in Jewish communities. You find it in special interest groups, people who are doing like advocating for the climate change, anti-climate change activists, or people who are working in anti-gun lobbies. All of them have think tanks, and they say, how do we word and how do we present this idea? How do we present this discussion? This is something that Muslims need to do as well. We need to have these conversations like, okay, well, how do we present our anti-war sentiment? And how do we make sure that our voice is heard? But unless and until the Muslim community is willing to put money and to give money to these lobbying firms, unfortunately, that change isn't going to happen, and it is unfortunately going to take a lot of time. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq.